Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today from our neighboring town of Hillsborough is Christine Krolck, who is currently serving as the Mayor of Hillsborough for the second time. She previously served on the Hillsborough City Council from 2004 to 2012 and was mayor from 2008 to 2010. Christine rejoined the council in 2020, but that's just part of her journey. Before I begin my interview with Christine, I would like to thank her for setting up and scheduling my recent interview with Congresswoman Jackie Speer. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. It's an honor. I'm a fan of the show and a fan of yours.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So before I get into my real interview here, I want to talk a little bit about your backstory and how you ended up here in Hillsborough, California. I read a little bit off the website. Christine, you were born in Philadelphia and raised in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And after college, you worked as an actress, a teacher, and a director in New York.
And a waitress.
And a waitress, of course. Oh, got to wait those tables, absolutely. So was it your dream to pursue a career in theater?
It was. I was shy as a child, and then in middle school, I don't know how, I got cast as Lucy in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Very loud character. It unleashed something in me, and I started doing theater in high school, and then was an English and theater major in college, and then went on to study theater in New York.
How long did you stay in New York?
I was there for 6 years. So I went to Circle in the Square School of the Theater, which was very much like the ACT Conservatory program. It was a full-time 2-year program, and did some seasons of summer stock, and did some off Broadway.
Yeah.
And taught acting, and produced a little showcase, waited on tables, and also had a great support job as at Lincoln Center doing the intermission bar for the New York Philharmonic. Yeah, it was very fun.
Did Jeff come along at that time?
I met Jeff in line for a bus at the very romantic Port Authority bus terminal in New York. And I met him on March 18th, the day after St. Patrick's Day. So in New York at the bus terminal, people were still throwing up.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Isn't that wonderful? So you and Jeff hit it off?
We did. His godparents live in Bucks County near my parents. So he was, on a Friday night, he was taking the bus down to visit them while I was taking the bus down to visit my parents. And the bus was late, so we started talking to each other in line. And then we sat next to each other on the bus for 2.5 hours. And I got off the bus, my dad picked me up, and I said, I just met the cutest guy I will never see again.
Yeah, really? Is that what you thought?
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah. How old were you at that time?
26.
And Jeff?
He was also 26. He is 10 weeks older than I am.
So did you guys date for a while, go through the dating thing, or what?
I so wish that we dated right away, because honestly, like I said, I had a huge crush on him by the time I got off the bus. I had given him my answering service number. Do you remember that? This was 1983.
Do.
And he gave me his business card.
Yep.
But I wasn't going to call him. And I didn't think he would call me, but he did. And we had lunch, and we had a great time. And then I waited to be invited to dinner, and I was not. I did not hear from him for a while. Then he invited me to lunch again. And it turns out his mother was an actress. His mother was actually a working actress on daytime drama television. She was a soap opera star.
Wow, is that cool?
Yeah,
or what?
she had the lead in Search for Tomorrow for 35 years.
Search for Tomorrow, sure.
And so she was doing that, and his sister was an actress. So I started to get the feeling he just wanted to be friends, and, kind of felt for a starving actress, wanted to give her a nice meal once in a while. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until after a year of having lunches that he told me he had been seeing someone, which I sort of figured out. We never talked about our personal life. It was all very, thanks, great lunch, great to see you, handshake, see you later. But he and the girlfriend were breaking up, and he wanted to know if I would maybe want to go to dinner. And I said, well, only if you're broken up. I said, because I had been so cool, Mark. I knew that I'd been really cool. I confessed to him. I said, because I have a really big crush on you, and I don't want to get my heart broken. And
Honesty's the best policy. That's great.
And he said, I know.
Oh, boy.
But things after that, things moved pretty quickly.
So they must have moved quickly. Did you guys get married in New York, or did you come out here to California to get married?
A little bit. We got married in the Philadelphia area. Okay, this is a true story. So we started dating at the end of April. He took me out to dinner, and all of a sudden we were dating every night. And in July, my mother worked at the college where I went to college. It's now called Arcadia University outside of Philadelphia. It's on the campus of a former estate. So the main building is very beautiful, and only alum can get married there. But there was a 2-year waiting list because they didn't have that many slots open. My mother calls me in July, April, May, June. I've been dating Jeff now for 3 months. And she said, there's been a cancellation next June 15th for, to have a wedding at the college. I said, book it, Mom. So a few more months go by. It's now November. Jeff Krolik takes me out to lunch at the Plaza Hotel in New York.
Oh, boy.
Orders champagne.
Okay.
Puts a little box on the table. There's this beautiful ring. Honey, I love you. Will you be my wife? And I said, yes. How about June 15th? I wish I could say I made that up, but it's every word of that is true.
That's a great story.
So we got married in June 15th, 1985, at what's now Arcadia University outside of Philadelphia.
Gosh, that's a good story. Wait till I see Jeff. Okay, yeah. So then what happened? You decided to come out to California?
He was working for HBO. At the time, there were so many different little cable systems around the country. Now there's just a few big ones. They've all merged. That HBO had offices all around the country. So he was transferred to San Francisco. So as soon as we got married, we moved out to San Francisco, and we lived on Russian Hill for 3 years.
Before coming to Hillsborough?
Yes, and then HBO moved him to Florida. We were there for 2.5 years. Then he went back to headquarters in New York, so we lived in Old Greenwich, Connecticut for 5 years. And then in 1995, he left HBO and took a job with what was then Sports Channel, and he became the general manager for what became Fox Sports Bay Area, now Comcast Sports Bay Area.
Yeah.
And he worked with the Giants, the A's, the Warriors, and the Sharks to broadcast their games.
And I remember, or recall, I guess, he was living down in Westwood, Los Angeles for a while, wasn't he?
Yes. When Comcast came in 2007 and bought the system from Fox, Fox offered Jeff the job of overseeing all the regional sports networks in the country. So he did that, and that was out of LA. And I was still on the city council, and our younger son was still at Burlingame High. So I stayed here for 3 years, and then I went off the council. Our son went off to college. And by that time, he didn't really want to move. He really enjoyed coming home every weekend. This is our home. So we just kind of went back and forth until he retired in 2020.
Okay. So let's go back to when you were in San Francisco. You worked at the Magic Theater at Fort Mason. Is that correct?
I did.
Did you know about the Magic Theater when you were back east, or did you just happen to discover it when you came out
I
here?
knew when I was in New York, because at for 10 years, Sam Shepard was their playwright in residence. And all of us in the 80s, Sam Shepard was our big hero. Buried Child, True West, and Fool for Love, probably his big 3 most popular plays, all premiered at the Magic Theater in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that was Mecca for any people who truly loved theater, which I did. So when we moved out to San Francisco, I went and I offered to volunteer, and I was assistant director for a show that became a hit for them, a new show called Sharon and Billy. And then the literary director left, and I was offered that position. So I got to work with playwrights developing new plays.
Yeah, when I read this on your website again, it said that you took a position at the Magic Theater, and I go, well, I gotta look this up. There's a magic show in town. I live in this bubble, okay,
right.
Christine.
You're not the only one that thinks that they do magic. Yeah.
So anyway, I go on to read, and it says the Magic Theater is among the most prominent theaters in the nation, solely dedicated to the development and production of new plays. And I thought, boy, this is a pretty cool
right.
place.
And they were really, they were pioneers in this. I mean, if you remember, back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, Berkeley Rep and ACT did what's called classic theater. They did Shakespeare, they did classics, they did Tennessee Williams, they did Arthur Miller. They were repertory companies, and the Magic did new plays. And that was really revolutionary. Now they all do new plays, but the Magic led the way.
So now you're in San Francisco, you moved to Hillsborough. How long were you living in Hillsborough before you decided, hey, I'm going to jump on the city council and see if I can make a difference?
Yeah, it's hard to just jump on the city council.
Yeah.
So most of us, we kind of have a farm team in Hillsborough because almost everyone who moves to Hillsborough moves there for the schools. We have, like Burlingame, excellent public schools. So I got very involved in the schools, as most of us on the council did. And that's kind of how you get to know people, you get a following. I think the town sees whether you play well with others. So I was very involved in the schools. I chaired what's called Concourts. Now, we used to have Hillsborough Concourt, which oversaw events. The main one was the Hillsborough Concourt d'Elegance. Mm-hmm. That's now spun off as its own event, and it's coming up, actually, in June. I think the June 25th up at Crystal Springs Golf Course. I'll give them a little plug. It's a great community event, and the committee does a beautiful job. But it's no longer a primary fundraiser for the schools. It does give a portion of the proceeds to the schools. But I oversaw events. That branch merged with Hillsborough Schools Foundation and is now Hillsborough Schools Foundation.
Yeah, and it used to be, at Crocker School, right?
The car show did, yes. Used to be at Crocker School.
Okay, on to the Hill Barn Theater. You served on the board, and you also chaired the Hill Barn Theater, right?
The board, yeah.
How did all that happen?
So Lee Foster is a friend of mine, and at the time she was the business director and then became actually the executive artistic director. She did both the business. So she asked me to be on the board, and I said, sure, I would do anything for her. So, but I didn't do anything theatrical. I never acted in any of the shows or directed or anything. I helped them raise money because that's what you do when you're on a board.
Yeah.
So we had a gala every year called the Bravo, where we'd give an award to an outstanding person who had supported the arts in the community. So we've honored many people who were good to the theater, and then some people who had been more broadly supportive, like Jerry Hill, Jackie Speer, and so I chaired a number of those galas over the years to help support them.
And this was all while you were also on city council in Hillsborough, or was it in between? Did it mix
Yes,
in?
it was pretty much about the same time. Yeah. I think I started on the city council in 2004, and I think I joined the Hill Barn board in 2007.
Okay. So besides all of this stuff going on, you, along with Liz Buljon and Michelle Gutierrez, formed a group called Swing Set.
Yes.
Correct? And you have performed the national anthem for the San Francisco Giants. How many times?
16 times.
16 times.
And we have a winning record, too, Mark. They only lost twice. All 16 times we sang.
That blows my mind. 16 times national anthem for the Giants. Great. Okay, so I'm sure you had to have an audition the first time around for that, or what? Well,
to back up a little bit, because this has to do with how I know you, I met you before Molly Stone's opened because I was in charge of selling script for the Hillsborough Public Schools. That was the first volunteer job I did. And I started thinking, people feel like they should buy script, but they don't really bother. I need to make buying script seem more fun. So because of my background in theater, I wrote a script musical. And it was called, because our schools are North, South, and West Side Story. And I recruited Liz, who recruited Michelle, because I wanted some legit voices. And we got up at parent group meetings and we sang, na 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 na. When you use script every day, from your first quart of milk to your last Cabernet. And then Liz came along and said, I like to shop at the Safeway store. Everything's great at the Safeway store. And Michelle came along with her beautiful soprano and sang, Marina, have you seen the store called Marina? If you remember that store from Foster City.
Of course I do, yes.
So we sold, script sales went through the roof, and we called ourselves the Scrippettes, and we sang at parent group meetings to promote script.
Crazy.
Then someone asked us to sing the national anthem for the opening day of Hillsborough Public Schools. Hillsborough Little League. Mm-hmm. So we worked up the national anthem in 3 parts, and we thought it was really pretty. So my husband, Jeff, as I mentioned, was working with the Giants. So he said to Larry Baer, who's the president of the Giants, my wife sings, and they sing the national anthem. Can they sing for the Giants? And Larry Baer goes, sure, no problem. Then apparently he turned around and said to Jeff, they can frickin' sing, right? So we never had to audition because of my husband's connection. But I don't think, Mark, that they really trusted that we were very good, because our first time that we sang was at Candlestick Park, 1999, on a Tuesday night in a really cold April.
evening.
There were like 9,000 people there.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our audition.
Yeah.
And they did like our version. And as soon as we came off the field, they asked us immediately to sing next year. And that happened every year for 16 years. Every time we came off the field, they asked us again. And one year, one of us couldn't do it for some reason. That's why but we sang right up to the pandemic.
Yeah, that's super, man. What a great
so
story.
we've sung at Pac-Bell Park, AT&T Park, Oracle Park, all those names plus Candlestick.
That is great.
So
What a
it was
wonderful
really fun.
reputation
Great
to
and
have,
a great honor.
Yeah.
And the very first time we did it at Candlestick, we went out for a sound check, and Rich Aurelia, the shortstop, was
Yep.
walking by. He goes, "You girls sound good." And we said, "Any advice?" He goes, "Sing fast." So we've always done that. We always sing at a really
Upbeat
pretty
pace.
upbeat tempo, and I
Yeah.
think they appreciate that.
That's great.
That may be one reason why they kept asking us
Well,
back.
16 times. I mean, is that some sort of park record or what?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. We never wanted to remind them
Yeah.
how many times we sang, because we didn't want them to turn around and say, "Oh, that's too many."
Yeah, super job. Boy. Are you guys still singing, you and Michelle?
We do.
And Liz?
And Liz, we do. The other thing we do is we do holiday music, because we do work things up in 3-part harmony, which is a little bit of time. And with holiday music, you can bring it back over and over.
Yep.
So we do municipal events. We never charge a dime. We do municipal events, charity events, events for friends. So we'll usually sing 10 or 12 times every holiday season.
That's great. Okay, good. All right, so let's move to Jackie Speer.
Oh, I love Jackie Speer.
I know you do. And she must love you, because I read that you served as her finance director for her 2006 statewide lieutenant governor campaign and for her first 2 campaigns for Congress. How did all that come about? How did that evolve?
You know, Jeff and I were at a 49ers game, and we were in the 49ers luxury suite, because my husband was involved in the sports world. And there was a little boy by himself, and I started talking to him, and he was so poised and well-spoken, and nobody was talking to him, and I had a nice conversation with him. And then his mother came over, and it turned out to be Jackie Speer. I was talking to Jackson Sierra, who is a very impressive, now very grown man. And I knew Jackie just from reading about her in the paper, and I knew that she had just declared running for lieutenant governor, and I really believe we needed more women in government, and I came to that especially after the Iraq War started. I've personally felt, standing in my kitchen, that these were sons and daughters that were being sent off to war, and that the men really didn't understand what it meant to send a child into that position. So I started thinking, gosh, I want to do something to support women in government. And here, right after I started thinking that, I meet Jackie Speer. So I said, if there's anything I can do to support your lieutenant governor race, please let me know. And she said, well, yes, I would love your help. So I said, well, would you like me to do a fundraiser for you in Hillsborough? She said, well, yes. And all of her races for San Mateo County Supervisor, State Assembly, and State Senator, she'd never had a fundraising event. She had always just done kind of a kitchen table, asking people for support. And now here she was running statewide, and she really needed a war chest. So I gave a fundraiser for her in Hillsborough. It was like shooting fish in a barrel. Everybody loved her. She'd never asked them for money. It was very successful. Then she asked me to join her campaign. So I did. I asked my husband, and he said, go for it.
Yeah.
And I started working for her, and we did over 200 fundraisers up and down the state of California, raised $4 million for that race. And her 10-year-old daughter, Stephanie, often came with her. And she is just, she now, I'm proud to say, is 28, and she is an investigative reporter on ABC 7 News, which I think Jackie mentioned last week. Yeah. But I I just got close to the family. And my husband became friends with her husband. We only lived 3 blocks apart in Hillsborough. So it was one of those rare times in life when you admire someone from afar, and the more you get to know them, the better they are, instead of the other way. She is a person, she's so authentic. She has such high integrity. She's a wonderful friend. I don't think she's ever lost a friend. She's a really wonderful friend. She puts friends and family first, and she's truly cares about her constituents in a really inspiring way.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'm telling people who admire her anything they don't already know.
Yeah, boy. How many fundraisers were you involved with her?
I oversaw 200 statewide.
200 fundraisers.
Yeah.
And when you say statewide, you were going from the top of the state down all
Absolutely.
the way down to San Diego area, that kind of thing?
Yep, everywhere. So basically, we just had Jackie Speer for Congress. People signed up. They said they wanted to help, and I would call them up and say, would you host a fundraiser? And we'll come down. And they would say, absolutely. And then I would just walk them through how to do it. And yeah.
Wow. That had to be exhausting.
It was
exhilarating,
good.
But exhausting,
yes,
right?
It was. It
yeah.
was.
Boy.
And she was endorsed by 21 of the 22 newspapers in California for that race. The only one who endorsed her opponent was John Garamendi, who did win the race. It was his 7th statewide race, I think, her first.
Yeah.
And he won by less than 2 points.
Well, it's just an amazing story overall. Okay, so now let's move to Hillsborough City Council. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
So you had lived in Hillsborough for a while before you decided to get on...
About 10 years.
10 years. There wasn't really a particular issue or an event, I guess, that prompted you to run for council, was it?
I had co-chaired the school bond for the community, and that led to a lot of interaction with the elected officials at the time. And so I started going to the town council meetings, and I've just found that I was really interested. I mean, Hillsborough doesn't have commercial, but I came home and I said to Jeff, I don't know why, I'm really interested in roads and sewers and trees. Mm-hmm. So I just was engaged by it.
Okay. So you had a 10-year gap, I think, between 2010 and 2020 before you rejoined.
2012, so 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah,
okay,
8 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any notable changes that happened during those 8 years?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I was very honored the first time I was mayor. We celebrated Hillsborough's centennial. So since this podcast is sponsored by the Burlingame Hillsborough Historical Society, we worked very closely with them, and they were very, very helpful. And I'm sure that you've talked to Joanne Garrison and Russ Cohn,
right, we're on the Historical
and
Society.
Terry Nagel, and they were all very, very helpful. And so we celebrated our town's centennial while I was mayor, and so that was a very joyful. I was really lucky, a very joyful mayorship. Then I decided not to run for a third term, mostly because Jeff was in LA and I was running back and forth, and both my parents were aging on the East Coast. So, and then after 2020, Jeff was retiring, and both my parents, bless them, had passed away in their 90s. There was an issue that was really kind of tearing people apart in Hillsborough, and that was the issue of wireless towers. Half the town seemed to want better wireless communication, and half the town did not want those towers. And I kind of thought maybe I could be helpful. I knew people on both sides. It was stirring up passions on both sides. So I thought, maybe I can be helpful on this issue. So I ran again. And I find the difference is people are much more engaged now than they were. And I think part of it is, Mark, the state is requiring so many more things from each municipality. I mean, besides the wireless issue, which can be contentious for any town. Carmel is now going through still big things about the cell towers. This housing element issue is very contentious. So I'm glad I came back, because we've been able as a town, a council, staff, and residents to work on the housing element issue, to try and satisfy what the state is requiring of us and still protect the character of the town and get to a win-win so that we can provide some very much needed housing. Our community, I'm very proud of them. They know that this is needed. They see this, their parents, their children, teachers, firefighters, medical personnel, nurses, they need places to live. We know that. But at the same time, there's there's a reason why the phrase is, it hits you where you live. This is where we live. People are protective of that. They've worked hard to get anybody who lives, not just on the peninsula, in California, in America, who has been able to find a home for themselves is protective of that. So I think we went through a really ultimately productive process in Hillsborough, and I was honored to be a part of that.
Boy, thank you for that, Christine. That was excellent. Thank you. This is your second time around, as second term as mayor. Is there anything that you learned from the first one that you said to yourself, I'll never do this again? I remember Jerry Brown at one time, he was asked a question at a press conference, because if you remember when he came in, everyone was doom and gloom about California. Fiscally, we were in trouble, and he came in and sort of straightened things out. And somebody said, what do you ascribe this California turnaround to? And he said, governance requires a set of skills which come through experience. And, it's really easy in not any profession. I don't think people look at neurosurgeons and say, I could do that. But politics is one of those experiences that people say, I could do that. And often we can. But the more experience you have, I think there's a couple things that you learn. Probably primarily, Mark, I would say, to be with the people. First of all, remember that you represent people. They voted for you to represent them. So you don't want to get out too far in front, and you don't want to be too far behind. It is one way I think that my theater background fits into my political experience now, is because they're both collaborative. I mean, to be in elected office is to be a collaborator. And if you're not willing to do that, you're in trouble. And if you're not willing to listen, I always say, I've been a teacher and I've been a waitress. This is public service. It's more like being a waitress than by being a teacher. Yeah. You're here to serve. And if you have an opinion that's at odds with your constituents, it's up to you to educate them why you feel that way and try to bring them along so that you have buy-in. Or if they have an opinion that's different from yours, you need to sit down and listen and find out where they're coming from. Because leadership is not just saying, follow me. Leadership is listening, inspiring, and collaborating. Well said, Christine Krolck. Wowee. Thank you for that.
I think that's what I learned.
Oh my gosh, that was great. And that was said with passion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we wrap this up, I have just a couple of things for you. How does one get a tour of the Carolans Mansion?
Well, you go to carollands.org, and it was built by Francis and Harriet Pullman Carolland, who did not have a D on the end of their name. But the name of the home is Carollands with a D, CAROLANDS.org, and click on tour. And you may have to, on busy times of the year, it's a lottery system, but they give tours on Wednesdays. They're free. So that is great. That's how to do it.
Great. We'll go up there, Ray. We'll
And anyone who's listening who has not been there, you definitely want to go there.
Yeah.
It is an amazing, amazing home. Yeah. And we have to thank Charles and Ann Johnson for purchasing it when it was in tear down situation and lovingly restoring it at great cost. And then they donated it to the Carollands Foundation that runs it now. And it's a real jewel of the peninsula, and we're very proud to have it in Hillsborough.
Absolutely, it is. It's gorgeous. Yeah. Okay, how about a little shout out to you? You have two grown sons, right?
I do.
Shout out to your sons and to Jeff, of course.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'm proud of my
family.
How old
are the boys now?
So John is 34, and he is a sports writer. So he did cover for the championship season, the Warriors, for the San Francisco Examiner, and he writes about basketball for something called the Big Three Basketball Network.
Great.
And he is also considering a move abroad, but we'll see how that plays out. And our younger son, Will, a.k.a. Billy, is married to our son-in-law, Eric.
Wonderful.
And they live in Portland, and Will is a software developer, and Eric is a high school biology teacher.
That's awesome. Great. And what about Jeff? He's retired, but he's still kind of working.
He's retired, and he's a consultant, and he consults for, among other things, Major League Baseball. On a lot of what he did was negotiating with teams for rights for broadcasting. So he still consults with Major League Baseball on some of that.
Great stuff today. Do you rest? Do you ever take any time off? What do you do?
Jeff says I have 2 speeds, fast and off.
Yeah, I just...
I have no trouble sleeping.
Yeah. Are you guys like on the go every night though, or what?
When you're in council, there's a lot of nighttime activities. And I do realize, and I think anybody who has the honor of being mayor realizes that it means something to people when you show up as mayor. So it is busy. But I do that coming back in, and I'm truly honored to be able to do it.
Christine Krolck, what can I say? Thank you so much for today.
Oh, thank you, Mark. It was really a pleasure.
I'd like to thank Christine Krolck, the mayor of Hillsborough, for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, and my musical director, Bray. You can hear more of Bray at bray.com. This podcast was recorded on Tuesday, April 19th, 2023. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.